On my birthday, my brother announced, "I'm taking your car." Mom and Dad already agreed. When I refused, Mom said, "Then hand us the keys to the house too." I just nodded, and the next morning, they walked out to an empty driveway and a for sale sign. I, 32M, woke up on my birthday morning to the smell of coffee brewing downstairs. The house was mine. Every mortgage payment, every repair, every sleepless night worrying about interest rates, all mine. But my parents had moved in 6 months ago after Dad's retirement didn't go as planned, and their savings evaporated faster than they expected. My brother crashed on the couch most weekends because his roommate situation was always complicated. I came downstairs in my worn pajama pants, expecting maybe a card or a casual happy birthday. Instead, I found the three of them sitting at my kitchen table with serious faces, like they were about to stage an intervention. Mom had that look she got when she'd already made a decision and was just waiting for everyone else to fall in line. Dad stared into his coffee mug. My brother sat back with his arms crossed, wearing the same smirk he'd had since we were kids when he knew he was about to get something I wanted. My brother spoke first. He said he needed my car. Not asking, telling. He said Mom and Dad had already agreed it made sense because his job required more driving than mine, and I worked from home most days anyway. He said it was practically wasting away in my garage while he was struggling with unreliable transportation. He said family helped family, and this was me helping. I stood there holding my empty coffee mug, trying to process what I was hearing on my birthday morning in my own house. I asked him if he was serious. He said completely serious. I looked at Mom, then Dad. Neither of them contradicted him. Dad wouldn't meet my eyes. I told him no. Simple as that. The car was mine, bought with my money, and I wasn't handing it over because he decided he needed it more. My brother's face darkened. He said I was being selfish, that I'd always been the golden child who never had to share anything. I nearly laughed at that, because golden child was rich coming from the son they'd bailed out of 3 financial disasters before he turned 25. Mom cut in then. Her voice had that cold edge that used to terrify me as a kid. She said if I was going to be that way about family, maybe they'd misjudged my character. She said if I couldn't spare a car I barely used, perhaps they shouldn't be living under my roof either. She told me to think carefully about what mattered more, a vehicle or my family. Then she said if the car was so precious, I should hand over the house keys too, and they'd find somewhere else to stay. The ultimatum hung in the air like smoke. My brother looked triumphant. Dad finally looked up, and I saw something in his eyes, not quite approval, but not disagreement either. He'd let Mom orchestrate this whole thing. Something cold settled in my chest. Not anger exactly. Clarity. I'd spent years being the responsible one, the one who had his life together, the one they called when they needed money or a place to stay or someone to co-sign a loan. And here they were, in my house, on my birthday, trying to bully me into giving up my car to my brother who'd never held a job longer than 8 months. I nodded slowly. I told Mom she was right. If that's how she saw things, maybe they should find somewhere else. I said I'd need the keys back by tomorrow. The room went silent. My brother's smirk faltered. Mom looked like I'd slapped her. She said I didn't mean that. I told her I absolutely meant it. She'd given me an ultimatum, and I was choosing the car. She started backtracking immediately, saying she didn't actually mean they'd leave. She was just making a point about priorities. I cut her off. I said the point was made, and my priority was clear. I wanted them out. Dad tried to play mediator then, saying everyone should calm down and talk rationally. I asked him where this rational energy was 10 minutes ago when they ambushed me about my car. He went quiet. My brother called me an asshole. I told him he could think whatever he wanted from his new address. I left the kitchen and went upstairs to my home office. I had work to do, birthday or not. Behind me, I heard Mom's voice rising, Dad's low murmur trying to calm her, my brother's angry footsteps. I closed the door and opened my laptop. But I wasn't working. I was planning. They thought I was bluffing. I could hear it in the way they moved around downstairs for the rest of the day, their voices carrying up through the vents. They were angry, but not packing. Mom made lunch like nothing happened. My brother played video games in the living room. They decided I'd cool off and apologize by dinner. I spent the day making calls. First to my attorney, an old friend from college who specialized in property law. I explained the situation. He laughed, not unkindly, and said he'd seen this pattern before. Family moves in temporarily, gets comfortable, starts making demands. He asked if I wanted them out legally and properly. I said yes. He said he'd draft a formal eviction notice, but in the meantime, I should document everything. Then I called a realtor I'd worked with when I bought the house. I asked her how fast she could move if I wanted to sell. She said in this market, with a well-maintained property in my neighborhood, she could have it listed in 48 hours and showings by the weekend. I told her to come by tomorrow morning for photos and an assessment. Next was the locksmith. I scheduled him for early the next morning. New locks, new security system code, new garage door opener. I wanted everything changed. Finally, I called my buddy who ran an auto detailing and storage business. I asked if he could pick up my car tonight and keep it in his secured lot for a while. He asked if everything was okay. I told him family drama and left it at that. He said he'd send a flatbed truck at midnight. Dinner was tense. Mom had cooked, another power move disguised as generosity. She served my favorite meal like that would fix everything. We ate in silence. Afterward, Mom said they should talk about this morning. I said there was nothing to talk about. She'd made her position clear, and so had I. Dad said I was being unreasonable and throwing away family over a car. I corrected him. They'd thrown away my goodwill over a car. My brother muttered that I was acting like a child. I told him that was funny coming from a 30-year-old who still needed Mommy to negotiate his needs. The argument escalated. Mom cried. Dad got angry, raising his voice about respect and gratitude. My brother called me every name he could think of. I sat there calmly and told them they had until noon tomorrow to be out. Mom said I couldn't legally evict them that fast. I told her she was right, which was why I'd already contacted an attorney for the formal process, but they could leave voluntarily now or wait for the sheriff in 30 days. Their choice. The crying got louder. Dad stood up so forcefully his chair fell backward. He said I'd regret this. I said maybe, but I'd regret being their doormat more. I excused myself and went upstairs. At midnight, I heard the truck outside. I watched from my bedroom window as my car was loaded onto the flatbed and driven away. The street returned to silence. Downstairs, the house was dark. They'd all gone to bed angry, probably still convinced I'd cave by morning. I didn't sleep much. At 6 a.m., I heard the first stirring downstairs. Then footsteps, faster, more urgent. My brother's voice, loud and confused, asking where the car was. I stayed in my room. More footsteps. The front door opening. Voices outside. I showered and dressed, taking my time. When I came downstairs at 7, they were all in the kitchen, looking rattled. My brother demanded to know where my car was. I told him I'd moved it somewhere safe. He said I was insane. Mom said I was being spiteful. I poured coffee and said nothing. The doorbell rang at 7:30. I answered it. The locksmith stood there with his toolbox. I let him in and told him to start with the front door. Behind me, Dad asked what the hell I was doing. I said changing my locks. Mom said I couldn't lock them out of the house. I reminded her she'd told me to take the keys back if the car mattered so much. I was just following through. The locksmith worked while my family stood there in shock. I went back to the kitchen and made breakfast, scrambling eggs like it was any other morning. My brother got in my face, saying I'd better stop this right now. I told him to step back or I'd call the police for threatening behavior in my home. He didn't step back. I pulled out my phone. He finally moved. At 8, the realtor arrived. Professional, cheerful, clipboard in hand. She introduced herself and asked to see the property. I gave her a tour while my family watched in horror. She complimented the updates, the location, the layout. She took photos. Mom followed us, saying I couldn't sell the house, asking where they were supposed to go. The realtor glanced at me. I told her these were temporary occupants who were moving out today. She nodded professionally and continued her assessment. By 9, she was writing up the listing agreement at my kitchen table. My family sat in the living room, shell-shocked. Dad finally came in and asked if we could talk privately. I said anything he wanted to say could be said right here. He said I was making a huge mistake, that family was forever, that I'd end up alone and regretful. I told him family was supposed to support each other, not exploit each other. He said letting them stay wasn't exploitation. I said trying to take my car through manipulation absolutely was. Mom tried a different tactic. She apologized, said she'd overreacted this morning, that of course I should keep my car. She said they'd all been under stress and tensions were high. She asked me to please reconsider. I signed the listing agreement while she talked. The realtor thanked me and said the property would be live online by this afternoon. My brother lost it then. He started shouting about what a selfish bastard I was, how I'd always thought I was better than everyone, how I was destroying the family. I let him rant. When he finally ran out of steam, I asked if he was finished. He glared at me. I told him he had 4 hours left. They didn't believe me until the locksmith finished and handed me the new keys. I walked to the front door and opened it. I told them it was time to leave. Mom started crying again, saying they had nowhere to go. I suggested my brother's place, since he had such pressing transportation needs for his job. My brother said his apartment was too small. I said that sounded like a problem they needed to solve together. Dad tried to physically intimidate me, stepping close and telling me I'd better back down. I held my ground and reminded him this was my house, my name on the deed, and I called the attorney and the police non-emergency line to give them a heads up about the situation. One call, and they'd be removed officially. Dad's face went red, but he stepped back. They packed. Slowly, resentfully, but they packed. Trash bags full of clothes, boxes of toiletries, Dad's medications, Mom's books, my brother's gaming console. They loaded everything into Dad's aging sedan, making multiple trips, shooting me hateful looks each time they passed. At 11:45, they were done. They stood by their packed car, waiting for me to crack, to apologize, to beg them to stay. I stood in my doorway with my new keys in my hand and said nothing. Mom made one last plea, saying I was going to be alone for the holidays, alone in this big house, alone with my precious car and my pride. I told her I'd rather be alone than disrespected. They left. I watched Dad's car disappear down the street, overpacked and struggling. Then I closed my new front door, locked it with my new key, and stood in the sudden silence of my empty house. It felt lighter somehow. Update 1. It's been 3 weeks since my family moved out. The house sold faster than anyone expected. 2 offers in the first weekend, both above asking. I accepted the better one, and we're closing in 10 days. The realtor said buyers loved the place, especially since it was move-in ready and I was motivated to sell quickly. My parents and brother didn't contact me for the first week. I figured they were waiting for me to apologize, to admit I'd overreacted, to invite them back. When I didn't, Mom started texting. The messages began with anger. How could I do this to them? Did I have any idea what I'd done? I was tearing the family apart. When I didn't respond, they shifted to guilt. Dad's blood pressure was up from the stress. They were staying in a cramped extended-stay motel. My brother had missed work because of all this chaos. I blocked their numbers after the texts turned to manipulation. Mom sent messages saying she was worried about my mental health, that this extreme reaction wasn't normal, that maybe I needed to talk to someone. Dad texted that he was disappointed in the man I'd become. My brother sent a string of messages calling me every insult he could think of, then asking for money for the motel because they were running out. I didn't respond to any of it. What I did do was take my car out of storage. I drove it home to my soon-to-be former house and detailed it myself in the driveway on a Saturday morning. While I was waxing the hood, my neighbor came over. Older guy, retired, had lived on the street for 30 years. He said he'd noticed my family was gone and asked if everything was all right. I gave him the abbreviated version. He nodded slowly and said he'd wondered how long I'd let them walk over me. Turned out the whole neighborhood had noticed my brother borrowing my car without asking, coming home drunk at 3 a.m. and waking people up, leaving trash in his wake. The neighbor told me he was glad I'd stood up for myself. He said his own brother had pulled similar stunts for years until he'd finally cut him off, and it was the best decision he'd ever made. We talked for an hour about family dynamics and boundaries. It helped more than I expected. I started making plans for what came next. The house sale would net me a decent profit, even after paying off the mortgage. I'd been looking at smaller condos closer to downtown, places with security and no lawn maintenance. Something that was mine alone, that I could lock down tight. I visited 3 properties and put in an offer on a 2-bedroom unit on the 8th floor with a view of the river. The offer was accepted. My attorney called to say my parents had contacted him, asking if there was any way to reverse the eviction or the sale. He told them no on both counts and advised them to stop contacting him or me. They tried calling from different numbers, but I recognized the area code and let them go to voicemail. I listened to one, Mom crying, saying she was sorry, that they'd made a mistake, that surely we could work this out. I deleted it without responding. The thing was, I didn't feel guilty. I thought I would. I expected the anger to fade and the doubt to creep in, the voice saying maybe I'd overreacted, maybe I should give them another chance. It never came. Instead, I felt steadier than I had in years, like I'd been carrying weight I didn't realize was there until I put it down. My brother tried to friend me on a gaming platform, probably thinking he could slip past my block numbers that way. I denied the request. He created a new account and sent me messages there, alternating between apologies and accusations. He said he understood why I was mad, but this was too far. He said Mom was having panic attacks. He said Dad was talking about me like I was dead to him. He said I owed them a conversation at least. I reported the harassment and blocked that account too. Closing day came. I signed the papers, handed over the keys to the new owners, a young couple with a baby on the way, and deposited the check. That afternoon, I moved into my new condo. The movers I'd hired took care of everything, and by evening, I was standing in my new living room surrounded by boxes, but feeling more at peace than I had in my family home. I ordered takeout and ate it on my empty balcony, watching the sun set over the river. My phone buzzed. Another unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. It was Dad. He'd borrowed someone's phone. He said we needed to talk like adults. I said I was listening. He said this whole situation had gotten out of hand, that I'd taken a simple disagreement and turned it into a war. He said they were family, and family didn't throw each other away over a car. I asked him if family ambushed each other on birthdays. Silence. Then he said they'd been trying to help my brother get on his feet, and I'd always had an easier time than him, so it shouldn't have been such a big ask. I told Dad that helping my brother at my expense wasn't help. It was enabling. I said they'd done it his whole life, bailing him out and making excuses, and now he was 30 years old and still couldn't handle basic adulting. Dad said that was harsh. I said it was true. I asked Dad when the last time my brother held a job for more than a year was. Dad couldn't answer. I told him I loved them, but I wasn't going to be their solution to my brother's problems anymore. I wasn't going to be their backup plan or their retirement facility or their ATM. I said if they wanted a relationship with me going forward, it would be on equal terms, with respect going both ways. Dad said I was asking them to choose between their sons. I said no. They'd already chosen when they backed my brother's play for my car. I was just accepting their choice. Dad hung up. Update 2. 2 months later, and things have settled into a new normal. The condo is fully set up now. Minimal furniture, clean lines, everything exactly where I want it. I've had friends over, something I rarely did when my family was living with me because I never knew what state the house would be in or what awkward interaction I'd have to manage. Work has been better too. I didn't realize how much mental energy the family situation was draining until it was gone. I'm focused, productive, even got a promotion last month because I'd taken on extra projects and handled them well. My boss commented that I seemed different lately, more confident. I didn't tell her why. My parents tried once more to reach out, this time through an aunt I rarely saw. She called and said she'd heard about our falling out, that family was important, that maybe I should be the bigger person and extend an olive branch. I asked her if she knew the whole story. She admitted Mom had told her their version, that they'd been staying with me temporarily and I'd suddenly kicked them out over nothing. I gave her the real version. She went quiet. Then she said she understood and wouldn't push. Before she hung up, she mentioned that my brother had moved back in with our parents at the motel, and things were tense there too. I wasn't surprised. What did surprise me was running into my brother at a grocery store 3 weeks ago. He was in the cereal aisle, looking worse than I'd ever seen him. Unshaven, weight lost, dark circles under his eyes. He saw me at the same time I saw him. For a second, neither of us moved. Then he walked over. He asked how I was doing. I said fine. He said the condo was nice. He'd seen the address somehow. I didn't ask how. He said Mom cried for days after I left, that Dad barely spoke anymore, that the motel room was cramped and miserable. He said this was all my fault for being stubborn. I told him it was his fault for thinking he could take my car. He said it was just a car. I said it was never about the car, it was about respect. He asked what I wanted, an apology. I told him an apology without change behavior was just manipulation. He said he couldn't change who he was. I said that was the problem. He stood there looking defeated, then asked if I could loan him some money because the motel was expensive. I said no. He called me a bastard and walked away. I finished my shopping and went home. I felt nothing, not satisfaction, not regret, nothing. It was just a fact now. We weren't close anymore. Maybe we never really had been. Last week, I got a letter forwarded from my old address. It was from Mom, handwritten, 6 pages long. She said she'd had time to think about everything, that maybe she understood why I'd reacted the way I did. She said she and Dad had always tried to help my brother because he struggled more than I did, and maybe they'd gone too far in the other direction. She said she missed me. She said Dad missed me too, even if he wouldn't admit it. She said they were moving into a small apartment next month, that my brother was finally getting his own place too, because living together wasn't working. She didn't ask me to forgive them or to come back. She just said she hoped someday I'd be willing to talk again, and that she was sorry for her part in what happened. It was the most genuine thing she'd ever written to me. I put the letter in a drawer. Maybe someday I'd respond. But not now. Now, I was still enjoying the peace I'd fought for, the space I'd claimed, the life I'd built without their chaos in it. My birthday is coming up again next month. I'm planning a trip, just me, my car, and the open road. No expectations, no obligations, no one demanding pieces of me I wasn't willing to give. Just freedom. And honestly, that's the best gift I could have given myself.